With there being so many bottles from Buffalo Trace, but the availability seeming to be abysmal, what are my alternatives to the top 10 bottles from Buffalo Trace? Let's find out. What is going on, everybody? Nathan here with the Everyday Drinker, bringing you guys a brand new video. Today is a video that I'm surprised I have not done yet, and we are going to be doing alternatives for Buffalo Trace bottles of bourbons from their standard Buffalo Trace offering all the way up to the King George T Stagg. Now, before we get into my bottles, as always, I want to know what bottles you would always recommend or you go out and pick up if you can't find or don't want to buy any Buffalo Trace offerings. Make sure you guys drop that like, leave that comment down below, and smash that subscribe button. But without further ado, let's get into bottle number one. All right, so for bottle number one, we're trying to find a replacement for this bad boy right here. We're talking about Buffalo Trace. Now, this is a 90 proof low rye mash bill from Buffalo Trace Distillery, and I love it. It's a great, great bottle. Comes in at about that $35 to $40. It's a sweet sip, and it's hard to find something that's somewhat similar to this in the same price range, right? In my personal opinion. But I think I found one that's a little bit different. We're talking about Penelope Wheated Bourbon. This is going to be their wheated mash bill, and I think it is on par with the sweetness that you get from Buffalo Trace. For the same, pretty much price, $35 to $40. It's coming in at 95 proof, so you're getting a little bit more proof behind it, and you're still getting a really nice, enjoyable sip without breaking the bank, and you can mix it, you can sip it on the rocks, or you can drink it neat. And I think these two are very, very comparable with each other. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments, but let's get into our second whiskey from Buffalo Trace. The second whiskey we're talking about from Buffalo Trace is none other than the Sazerac Rye. Now, this is coming in at 90 proof. They are coming out with a 100 proof offering of this right here, but this is a really nice, easy mixing rye. Comes in at about $39. You can't go wrong with that price, in my personal opinion, but this, like other Buffalo Trace offerings, are really, really hard to come by. So my personal recommendation to counteract and an alternative for this is going to be this right here. This is the 13th Colony Southern Rye Whiskey, coming in at 95 proof. Another proof point that's a little bit higher than this, but the flavor profile of this, in my personal opinion, for roughly the same price, is 10 times better than the Sazerac Rye. It's finished with French oak staves, so you're getting a little bit more boldness, a little bit more complexity, a little bit more of a creamy mouthfeel because you're getting a little bit more proof behind what this rye whiskey has to offer compared to the Sazerac Rye. So yeah, I think that this, even though the flavors are a little bit different, I think that for what this has to offer, I think you're going to get more from this bottle comparative to the Sazerac Rye. Let's get into bottle number three. Eagle Rare 10-year. Now, this is one of the harder to find Buffalo Trace offerings, but coming in at 90 proof, it's one of my favorite Buffalo Trace offerings at that low proof point. I've thought about this bottle long and hard. Do I want to match the age? Do I want to match the flavor profile? And while a lot of people are going to say they're going to recommend Russell's Reserve 10-year as an alternative to this bottle, I've got one that's a little bit better. I'm only kidding with you. I'm talking about Russell's Reserve 10-year because this bottle sits on the shelves and, well, it's just as good, maybe a little bit more deep in flavor than the Eagle Rare 10-year. But for me, I like the sweetness of Eagle Rare a little bit more than what Russell's has to offer. This bottle in and of itself, because of the availability, the price, and what you're getting for it, is a little bit better than the Eagle Rare because this is a very, very hard bottle to find for some people. Russell's Reserve 10-year has found a soft place in my heart as a 90 proof 10-year-old whiskey coming from the Wild Turkey Distillery. I used to hate this bottle. The old label, I wasn't a big fan of the juice. It might have been just that batch that I had picked up, but the new batches that they've been coming out with, I probably go through a bottle of this every 3 or 4 months and have to get a new one to replace the old one because I enjoy it. It's a good mixer. It's a good bottle for $40, $45, whereas the Eagle Rare now is almost at that $50 MSRP price. And, well, some stores are selling it for $90. And for me, I think that for the cost efficiency, the availability, and the flavor profile of the Russell's 10 might be a little bit different than the Eagle Rare 10-year. I think that it is comparative that the two, I wouldn't say best, but one of the best and another highly sought after distillery. I'll let you guys flip flop on which ones you think I'm talking about there. But I think that Russell's Reserve 10-year is a good alternative to the Eagle Rare 10. Blanton single barrel, we all know it. Some love it, some hate it, some just think it's okay. This right here is a bottle that a lot of people go after and hunt in their beginnings of their whiskey journey, and that's okay. You're allowed to do that, but there are better bottles of bourbons out there, flavor-wise, price-wise, and, well, just in my personal opinion, just better all-out bottles than Blanton's. Having one Blanton's on the shelf isn't a bad thing, but having multiple might be. Let's get into my bottle alternative for Blanton single barrel. You guys hear me say it all the time, and if you don't, well, then now you know. 1792 single barrel is my personal recommendation that runs a lot better than this bad boy bronze top horsey right here, Blanton's bourbon. Gonna get a little bit more proof out of this at 49.3, which is 98.6 proof, whereas Blanton's is coming in at 93 proof. I think they should get rid of this bottle all in all and just keep bottling the gold, get more barrels for the gold, and you know, I think the gold might be a little bit more available. But nonetheless, they're still gonna be producing this bottle. And the fun thing about the Blantons that you don't really get from other bottles is the dump dates. Everybody tries and hunts dump dates. Me personally, I'm trying to find a 4/1/2025 dump date for my son's birthday. So if any of you out there have a Blanton's as 4/1/2025 dump date, let me know down in the comments below and send me an email, because I would love to take that bottle off your hands to have that as a memorabilia piece for my son's birth date. But nonetheless, juice inside the bottle and availability and everything in and of itself. I think that the 1792 single barrel, this is a single barrel compared to a single barrel. I think the juice inside is better than this bottle right here. And you're going to enjoy yourself a little bit more with the 1792 than the Blantons. Let's get into our next whiskey of choice. Ladies and gentlemen, next up we're talking about E.H. Taylor small batch and single barrel. I'm only putting one bottle on the bar because they're a little bit hard to get back there, but we've got the single barrel on the bar, and I think that for me, I'd rather go out and get the small batch because I think the flavor profile of the small batch is a little bit better than what you're banking on to get a home run hit from the single barrels, because the single barrels sometimes run about $150, and that's a little bit too much and too pricey for me. But this 100 proof single barrel offering from Old Forester is not. These are coming in at about $65 to $70, 100 proof single barrels. You have a boatload of flavors in all of these bottles. I have 6 or 7 of these 100 proof Old Forester bottles and love every single one of them. Now, I have had a couple of E.H. Taylor single barrels, and I've only liked a handful of them. Now, some people get out there and they hunt, you know, specific store picks that get some really interesting barrels for them. But nonetheless, I think that through and through, a better alternative to the E.H. Taylor single barrel and small batch, and for a little bit cheaper than the single barrel and a little bit more expensive than the small batch, you're going to enjoy yourself a little bit more with the Old Forester Black Label single barrels. Let's get into our next bourbon. Next up, we're talking about Weller, and I'm not just talking about Weller 12, I'm talking about the entire Weller lineup, and I don't want to put the entire lineup on the bar top here because that would take up the entire bar top, but the entire Weller lineup has offerings from 90 proof up to 114 proof with the full proof, and then also, you also have the William LaRue Weller, the king of that entire lineup, coming in at barrel proof up to 12 years old. Really, really great bourbon. Can't go wrong with that whatsoever. And everybody goes out and tries to hunt the entire rainbow lineup of the Weller bourbons. Some of them are great, some of them are okay, and some of them are just dog water, in my personal opinion. Weller 12 is in that category of just okay. But I know a lot of you out there don't have the ability to acquire a Weller 12. So what we are doing with this Weller 12, it's going to be the August bottle raffle for the Patreon community. So go over, check out the Patreon. You might be able to get your hands on a Weller 12 for as little as $10 an entry ticket, and as little as $2 a month. You can help support me, get in on barrel picks, and some fun things. So if you want to win a bottle of Weller 12, if you've never had one, Go check out that link out down below, because that's what is going to be the August bottle raffle for the Everyday Drinker Patreon. And we've got some fun things to label for it. The Cedar Ridge pick is finally complete, and I can't wait for that to drop. But Weller 12, the Weller lineup, there's one wheated bourbon out there that I think is very comparative to this. Not as good in some regards, but in other regards, 10 times better. Now talk about Maker's Mark. A lot of you guys were probably going to guess that this was going to be the alternative I put on there, because they've got so many great offerings comparative to the Weller lineup. Now, when you think about the William LaRue Weller, that's their big dog. I'm talking about, you know, the cellar age. Now, it might not be as good, but the age is up there, the proof is up there, and, you know, the cellar age is good. It's just not as good as the William LaRue Weller, but you can find it for a lot cheaper. Maker's Mark has single barrel offerings. They've got their wood finish series. They've got the 101 and the Maker's Mark 46. They might not have as many core offerings as the Weller lineup, but I think that from what you can get from the single barrels, I think you're going to enjoy yourself a little bit more and find some exploration in Maker's Mark wood finishes and their stave profiles and things along those lines that you're not going to find from Weller, in my personal opinion. So that's why I'm putting the Maker's Mark as my alternative to the Weller lineup. But like I said, if you want to win a Weller 12, check that link out down below for the Patreon. This is going to be the August bourbon bottle raffle. Let's get into our next bottle. My personal favorite bottle from Buffalo Trace, through and through, from batch to batch, is going to be Stagg Jr. And it's hard to beat Stagg Jr. as a whole, but I do think that there are some really comparative bottles to this out there right here, right now, and I'm going to show you that right here, right now. Now, I've got two bottles on the bar top because I could not decide on which one I wanted to put on here, because Blue Note coming in at 45, 50 bucks. Absolutely incredible single barrel, but you're not going to get the proof that you get with the Stagg Jr. You're going to get some of that sweetness, but you're not going to get the proof. They're in that 115 to 120 range, whereas these are in that 125 to 130 range. The one comparative that the price is a little bit more, availability is a little bit harder to find than Blue Note, but Old Forester single barrel proofs, you're going to get that proof. You're going to get that depth of flavor that Stagg Jr. has, and it's very, very comparable. If you're looking for something a little bit lighter and sweeter, Blue Note is definitely a way to go, but I wanted to put that on the bar just because I thought it deserved a spot. But I think the true 1-to-1 ratio of Stagg Jr. goes to the Old Forester Blue Labels. You get the proof, you get the deep, dark flavors, some sweetness, some cherries, some citrusy notes, some dark brown sugars and leathery notes, all of which come from both of these bottles. This one, definitely a little bit harder to find. These are going to be, if you can find this for MSRP, cheaper than this, but these are a little bit easier to find, to me, in my personal opinion. Next whiskey. Next up, we're talking about Thomas H. Handy. This is going to be their barrel proof rye offering. Absolutely delicious rye whiskey. One of my first BTAC bottles I ever got. I do think that this is one of the best rye barrel proof offerings, but it's coming in at that 5 to 6 year range. So you're not getting much age to it, but you're just getting some really, really good flavors. My comparative bottle to this is going to be Bardstown single barrel proof rye whiskeys. These are finished with laser etched cherry wood and things along those lines. Now, I could also put the Jack Daniel's single barrel proof ryes on here, but for me, I think flavor to flavor, Bardstown Rye is very comparative to the Thomas H. Handy, in my personal opinion. I love both of these bottles. This is going to be a little bit easier to find in an everyday shelf for some stores in some states out there. This one's coming in at 119.6 proof, and it comes in at 6 years old. This is going to be 124.9 proof, so a little bit higher proof, but once a year release, and also 5 to 6 years old. So you're getting more availability, higher hype bottle, but really good juice, really good juice. Can't go wrong with that. Bardstown Rye as an alternative to the Thomas H. Handy, in my personal opinion. Next up. Next up is probably the hardest one to find an alternative for, and I'm talking about Eagle Rare 17. Now, I could have put possibly, the Michter's 10-year bourbon. That's super, super hard to find. But the one that I'm comparing it to is still hard to find, but you can find it and find it for a little bit cheaper than the Michter's 10. And it's got a little bit more age to it comparative on the bottle, whereas Michter's 10 might have 13, 14-year-old single barrels in there. Eagle Rare 17 comes in at 101 proof. Now, those Michter's 10s coming in at like 93, 94 proof. My bottle that I'm comparing it to is going to be this right here. Jack Daniel's 12-year. You're getting 12-year age stated bourbon. You're getting it at 107 proof, so it's not super proofy. It's not going to burn you, but you're getting some really nice flavors comparative to what Eagle Rare has to offer. Really nice deep flavors, really nice age, really easy sipper. Same thing with the Jack Daniel's 12-year. This is absolutely impossible to find. I was very, very lucky and fortunate last year to get it in a raffle. This right here, you can go out and you could possibly find it for like 200 bucks. And you're going to enjoy this bottle very, very much. As you guys can see, I've enjoyed my bottle very, very much. The flavors are a lot different, but the experience is very, very similar in my personal opinion. Low proof, easy sip, enjoyable sip. Can't go wrong with it whatsoever. Let's get into our last and final bottle alternative. I'm clearing out my top shelf, but we're talking about George T Stagg, the king daddy of everybody from Buffalo Trace. This is barrel proof, 15-year-old at least bourbon from Buffalo Trace, and it's absolutely incredible. And I don't personally own the bottle that I would recommend as an alternative to this, but you can go out there and find it on secondary markets and things along those lines for half the price of the George T Stagg. It comes from a different distillery, but the distillate of what that distillery is using is Buffalo Trace. And I'm talking about the A. Smith Bowman, I believe is what it is. It's the cask strength offering. They're now on batch number 4. You're getting high proof, 10-year-old bourbon out of that batch. Previous one was 9 years and 6 months or something along those lines. I'll have a picture of that bottle right here on the screen for you to see. But the distillate, pretty much the same, coming out of a second distillate process. Really nice age, really nice proof. Gonna be a little bit different in flavor profile, but very, very similar and sweet like the George T Staggs are. I personally love the Bowman, the John J. Bowman single barrels coming at 100 proof. Absolutely incredible bottles. Those A. Smith Bowman batch proofs, I've had a couple of batches, samples of those. Absolutely incredible. Very, very delicious. I don't know if they're as good as George T Stagg, but the availability, the price, the proof, the age, very, very, very comparative to George T Stagg in my personal opinion. I would love to be able to get one of those bottles for the bar top as well and do a true comparison of 1-to-1 of what that has to offer compared to George T Stagg and that new batch compared to the batch from 2024 of the George T Stagg that is. Let me know down in the comments below what your thoughts are on my comparisons, my alternatives, what you would alternate between those Buffalo Trace offerings down in the comments below. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Check that link out down below for the Patreon that will get you a chance to win a Weller 12-year. But until next time, this has been Nathan with The Everyday Drinker. Cheers.